It's the story that you've all heard before. The stock market crashes, then a couple of years later, someone comes out and shows you how they made millions, sometimes billions, from the market crash. Obviously, one of the most well-known ones is Michael Burry, who shorted the stock market in 2008 and made a whole lot of money. That was made famous by the movie The Big Short. Also, you've got George Soros, who pocketed $1 billion in a day by shorting the British pound. You got Andy Krieger. He made millions as the Kiwi crashed. These guys, they had specific tactics that they used to make money in the crash. While most investors were getting crushed, pulling out of the market and losing money, they made money. Now, what I want to do in this video is talk about how you can do the same. Now, I can't guarantee that you're going to make millions. If I did, you should probably click off this video. I mean, that all depends on how much you start with, but I am going to show you tactics on how to make good money in a stock market crash. So we've all heard of the stories of the stock horror shows. GoPro, everyone thought this company was going to be worth tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. Fast forward to today, and how many people are buying GoPros? Not many at all, and thus the stock got absolutely crushed. It's fallen by over 90%. Aurora, that's a bit more of a recent example. Everyone thought that once weed was legalized in Canada, that Aurora, the company, would take off. Yeah, not so much. Once all of that hype had died down, it actually fell from 150 Canadian dollars to under 10. Nikola, an even more recent example, again a stock that had a lot of hype because of the EV potential, but it got crushed. Now, the reason I've showed you these three examples is because not all investors lost money with these stocks. There was this astute group of people who were able to identify the hype, and they went and shorted these stocks. Once the bubble popped and the stocks crashed, these investors made good money. Because when you short a stock, you profit when it goes down. If it goes up, you lose money. So if you are able to identify trends when stocks are getting hyped and overpriced, then you can make a lot of money through shorting them. I mean, let's be honest, sometimes it can be easy to tell when stocks are overhyped, because you get your neighbor John, who knows nothing about investing, and he tells you he's buying the stock. The stock's all on YouTube, the stock's in the news, it's on social media. These are often signs that they're overpriced. For example, Bitcoin, at the height of Bitcoin, everyone was talking about it. I remember my flatmates buying it. My friends who didn't even know what the word invest meant, they bought it. And what do you know? Next thing, the bubble popped. So that's one way you can make money in a market crash. It's by shorting certain individual stocks. That's the tactic that Michael Burry used to make money from a crash. He shorted subprime mortgage bonds. Or George Soros, he made $1 billion in a day by shorting the British pound. The other thing that you can short if you are extremely brave is the stock market as a whole. As of today, the market is at or close to all-time highs, and there's a lot of people saying it's overvalued. Even Michael Burry himself thinks the market looks overinflated. He said, "Index fund inflows are now distorting prices for stocks and bonds in much the same way that CDO purchases did for subprime mortgages more than a decade ago. The flows will reverse at some point," he pointed out, "and it will be ugly when they do. Like most bubbles, the longer it goes on, the worse the crash will be." Now this crash that he's speaking of, if it happens and you short it, well, you'll make good money. The problem is that we don't really know when a crash may occur. It could be 5 years from now. That's why I never like shorting the stock market as a whole, because it's just too hard to pick the timing. You know, betting against the entire market, I just don't think it's a good idea. Because over time, the market makes money and will grow. They just have these short downhill blips, which no one exactly knows when they will occur. So with regards to shorting, the way to go is by picking overhyped stocks or currencies, ones that you can easily identify that are overvalued. I don't really recommend shorting the stock market as a whole, but again, that's your choice. So that's one method to make money in a market crash, shorting assets. The next method that I'm going to show you is the Warren Buffett method of making money in a market crash. This is the method that I personally use as well. I want to get into some short-term history to show you this example. 2007-2008 wasn't a fun year for most investors. It was the year of the housing bubble crash, where not only did house prices get burnt, but the market crashed as well. If we take a look, it crashed by over 50% from November 2007 to March 2009. So the average American stock investor lost more than half of their worth in just over a year. Imagine that. Fast forward just a year later, for some investors, they lose more than half of their entire life savings. Now naturally, this is what most people do. Warren Buffett calls it emotional investing. Around the bottom of the crash, they take their money out of the market and they put it in assets that are considered safe, like cash in the bank. They think, stocks are no longer for me. I've lost so much money. Stocks, they crash. Stocks are no good. So they sell their shares around the bottom of the crash as prices are falling, aka, well, they're cheap, emotional investing. But this gives an enormous opportunity for investors who don't invest with their emotions, those that invest by looking at the facts. Facts of the matter were that early 2009 was the best time to invest. When stocks had crashed, everyone was panicking, most were selling, there was blood in the market streets, as the saying goes. That is when you want to buy, because that's when stocks are on sale. And Warren Buffett in 2007, he was very cautious with how many stocks he bought. He was mainly buying bonds. But in 2009, after the crash, Buffett went on a buying spree, deploying all of that cash that he'd saved up for so long. And it paid off. Those who bought in the midst of panic in the recession, they made the highest returns. I mean, the stock market since March 2009 has gone up over 400%. So if you want to make money in the next market crash, always remember the best time to buy is in a crash, when everyone else is panicking. And you might say, Cooper, the market went up 400%, that's 5 times the amount. That's not necessarily gonna make me a millionaire. And yes, I 100% agree, but there is one thing that you might be forgetting. The 8th wonder of the world, compound interest. You know, there's the old tale of this man asking for one thing from the wealthy king before he dies. The king says, yes, I'll give you the thing depending on what it is. The man says, you see that chessboard that you're playing on? Please grant my family 1 grain of rice for the first square, 2 for the second, 4 for the third, 8 for the fourth square, and so on for all 64 squares. The king grants the man his wish, thinking it would be just a small gesture for a poor dying man. Before the king knew what 1 to the power of 64 was, it worked out to be that even his entire kingdom did not produce that much rice. So he had to give his whole kingdom away. And that's the power of compound interest. If you invest small amounts of money now and give it time, that can turn into millions in the future. What you need for the recipe is a high return, which you can get by investing after a crash, and of course, time in the market. Time to let your investments compound on themselves and grow. Now, the last thing I want to mention about making money from a stock market crash is choosing the right investments at the right time. I want to bring your attention to this graph. It's a graph by Fidelity, which tells you what type of sectors do well in different parts of the market cycle. At the top of the cycle, you want to be playing the game defensively. You want the precious metals like gold, which holds its value. You want consumer stocks, which are not cyclical in nature. You want healthcare, which is still needed no matter what market we are in. However, when the market starts crashing, you want to adjust your strategy slightly. At the bottom of the market, the consumer cyclicals and financial stocks are the ones to go for, because they're normally ridiculously cheap in price and no one wants to own them. When the market starts recovering a little bit, then it's time to adjust into sectors like transportation and especially technology. Because at the start of the bull market, after it crashes, technology stocks are so cheap but have a lot of potential for growth. For example, Netflix stock since 2009 has gone up over 6,000%. Amazon, that's gone up over 4,500%. Apple, over 3,500%. After a market crash, you really want to be picking out the right type of stocks in order to make money. The ones that are going to be disruptive over the next 10 or so years. If you can do this, pick them early and reinvest your profits, you can make a lot of money, there's no doubt about that. Most people look at a market crash and it's something that they fear. However, if you have the right mindset and you use the correct tactics, some of which I've outlined in this video, a crash can be something that you can turn into a great opportunity.